Trust and idol worship, almost fanatical, blindly protective, turned me as a teenager into an unwitting accomplice. And accomplices, there weren't just me. How many perpetrators in this world still roam free beyond the reach of the law? I, like them, like Teacher Vin, will be gnawed at by the undeniable truth day by day, until we waste away to mere bones and die. Darkness beneath Rach Duke Bridge, the horrifying journey to find the bloodstained straw mat and the truth buried for 10 years. Dear listeners, please join us in diving into the story. This story happened 10 years ago, but it always feels like it was just yesterday. Every day when I wake up, I must carry a heart pretending to be innocent to face this world. It seemed like Quan was the first to suggest it. He said, "Let's go look for it. What do you say? Dare to come?" The boys smirked, acting as if anyone who didn't go was a coward. They were more lenient with me. Quan even said, "Thuong's a girl. She doesn't have to go if she doesn't want to." I stood at the back of the group, raised my hand, and softly said, "I want to go." Everyone turned to tease Kwai. "Even Thuong's going. And you're not. Kwai, are you a coward?" Kwai twisted his hands together, almost forced to step toward Rach Duke Bridge. The river wind blew fiercely, making his pant legs puff up in waves. Impossible to tell if he was trembling or not. The 6 of us kids, the oldest being Quan, who was only in 8th grade, were like a herd of young calves, laughing and joking boisterously on the way to Rach Duke Bridge. The bridge spanned the Đồng Nai River, its massive pillars supporting a narrow deck with 2 iron rails, flanked by stone slabs. Through the gaps between the slabs, you could see the murky, churning waters of the Đồng Nai River below. Every few hundred meters, a spiral staircase led down to the bridge's pillars. The small platform at the base of each pillar was like a hidden lookout beneath the deck. But standing there, clinging tightly to the railing in fear, who had the mood to admire the view? I never understood what those staircases leading to the pillars were for. But that year, someone discovered a piece of a dismembered body on one of them. It was apparently part of an upper limb, still bearing the distinct features of a young girl not yet fully grown. A witness said there was a red mole the size of a bean on that piece of flesh. Hearing this, Kwai immediately burst into tears because his sister, Thủy, had been missing for over a week. He remembered that mole, sobbing that it wasn't a mole but a wart. The police quickly identified the victim. It was indeed Thủy. This shocking murder and dismemberment case shook the small town. The provincial police offered a 50 million dong reward to catch the killer, with additional rewards for anyone providing useful leads, depending on their significance. Rach Duke Bridge was sealed off for over half a month, but the case saw no progress, since it was a mandatory route for cargo trains. The barricades were temporarily lifted at 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. each day. Quan decided to lead us in sneaking past them. He said he had insider information. The killer had dismembered the body on a straw mat. But the police hadn't found this piece of evidence yet. If we found it first, we'd claim the reward. For kids like us, 50 million dong was a tantalizing sum. It was so large that it overshadowed the fear this fresh death had sown on the bridge. Sneaking past the barricades was easier than we thought. There were no guards, just a yellow cord tied symbolically to the railings on both sides of the bridge. But it seemed to have been cut long ago, fluttering in the wind like silk ribbons welcoming passersby. "Hey, what if someone got here before us?" Than, with his sly eyes, asked Quan. He was balancing on the rail, wobbling like he was walking a tightrope. Quan frowned at him, yanking him down. Suddenly, the entire bridge shook violently, small stones on the deck falling through the gaps in the slabs. Rach Duke Bridge was like a giant sieve, ready to sift all of us tiny humans into the river below. "Want to die? The train's coming," Quan shouted, leading the way to the spiral staircase ahead. Everyone hurriedly followed, but halfway down, we realized Kwai was still on the deck, gripping the railing tightly, his face flushed red and frozen stiff from the river wind. "Come down," Quan waved at him, but Kwai shook his head stubbornly. I was at the back, closest to him. I thought I heard him sobbing. "I'm not going down there. There's blood." If he wasn't Thui's brother, Who might spot some unexpected clue? Who'd bother dragging this deadweight along? Than sneered at Kwai. I suddenly realized how pitiful Kwai was and how cruel we were. We all knew Thủy, Kwan, Thủy. And I went to the same school. She was a grade above us. Thủy was a vibrant, beautiful girl, completely unlike her shy, sluggish younger brother. She was always lively, her laughter and tears both bold and unrestrained. But now, for money, we were forcing her timid little brother to the scene where his sister had been dismembered. The train arrived. As it roared past, a howling gust kicked up. Than, down at the pillar, suddenly screamed. We left Kwai behind and ran down to see. Finding a shiny fragment glimmering on the massive stone pillar, the boys huddled together, examining the tiny speck the size of a grain of rice. Guessing wildly, I glanced at it and stepped back. Not long ago, I'd wanted a shiny decoration like that. The nail technician at the salon held a file, smiling as she asked, "Little sister, picked a design yet?" "This one, new diamond studs, star-shaped, super sparkly." I stared at the nail sample covered in glittering stars but shook my head. School doesn't allow manicures. Then I slung my backpack and ran off. The next day, I saw Thủy at school. She flaunted her star-studded nails, making herself look like a night sky. I didn't know if she chose that design for the same reason I almost did. Because our music teacher was Teacher Vin. But at that moment, I was certain she'd been at this pillar, either when she was alive or after she was killed. The boys finally concluded the shiny fragment was meaningless. The train had passed, and we climbed back to the deck. Kwan reached out, pulling Kwai, who was still clinging to the railing. "Down, Kwai. We're not just here for the money. Don't you want to find the killer soon to avenge your sister?" Kwan's face flickered with sorrow, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine or fake. "I know forcing you here is tough, but I swear, this is the last time." Kwan slid his hand to Kwai's shoulder, giving it a firm squeeze. Kwai kept his head down, silent, his eyes fixed on the stone slabs beneath his feet. I wondered if his heart was churning like the murky river below. I saw his hands slowly clench into fists, and his steps forward finally seemed deliberate. We moved to another spiral staircase, continuing our search for the straw mat used in the dismemberment. Than and the other two boys walked arm in arm, chatting. Kwan and Kwai trailed behind, and I was in the middle, unintentionally overhearing them. Than said, "Thủy was the type of girl who brought trouble on herself. Right, she'd definitely grow up to be that kind of woman," said Fat Melon, a boy who'd repeated 3 years. He glanced at Shirt Flower, who dropped out early to work with his family. "Shirt Flower, you'd know best, right?" Before Thủy mother caused a scene at school, accusing Teacher Vin of seducing female students. There were rumors that Thủy was ambiguously involved with many boys, from schoolmates to high schoolers and even gangsters outside. For a while, Shirt Flower frequently visited our school, also because of Thủy, even if her body was chopped up and thrown into the river. Thủy soul probably hasn't left this bridge. Keep talking nonsense, and she'll drag you down. Shirt Flower glared at Fat Melon, muttering, "I didn't even want to come. Just afraid you'd think I was guilty. So I tagged along to this damned place. And now you bring this up. Is it fun?" "Guilty." Than, like a shark smelling blood, narrowed his eyes and leaned toward Shirt Flower. "Why would you feel guilty? Is this dismemberment case tied to you?" "Insane." Shirt Flower suddenly shoved Than away. His face twisted with anger, but his complexion was ghostly pale. Fat Melon grinned stupidly beside him. This internal squabble was the drama he'd been waiting for. Just then, Kwan stepped forward from behind, his face icy, calming both sides. Another spiral staircase appeared ahead, diverting everyone's attention. Shirt Flower, frowning, as if to prove something, led the way down quickly. There was nothing to find on this pillar. Than complained in frustration, saying if there was any evidence, the police would have collected it long ago. Then he turned to question Kwan about where the straw mat tip came from and whether it was reliable. Kwan replied coldly, "If you don't believe it, leave." Than muttered a few words but didn't dare argue back. As we returned to the deck, Fat Melon climbed up first, with Shirt Flower close behind. Suddenly, a clang rang out, followed by Fat Melon's panicked scream, making us all jump back a few steps. It seemed Fat Melon's weight, combined with the old staircase, caused a weld on the railing to break. His body leaned against the broken railing, teetering dangerously, his feet still on the suspended step but trembling so much he couldn't muster strength. In truth, even before the dismemberment case, Rach Duke Bridge was a forbidden place for kids. Every year, during flood season and summer breaks, people drowned in the river. Adults said the spirits of those who drowned lived beneath the bridge's caverns. That's why most who jumped from the bridge died. Even if they didn't drown, the water ghosts would swarm and pull them under. The night adults told this story to keep me away from the bridge. I had a dream. In it, I stood on Rach Duke Bridge, watching schools of large fish swimming east, filled with excitement, but then I realized they weren't fish. They were bodies, face down in the water, drifting with the current, their black hair fanning out like fish fins swaying. My fear of the bridge took root then. Yet when no one forced me, I still followed. At that moment, I stared at Fat Melon. Below him was Shirt Flower, whom Fat Melon had just exposed. Shirt Flower looked up slightly, one hand gripping the railing, but he was pulling inward. What if he let go? I imagined the next scene, Fat Melon falling into the water, flailing, sinking, resurfacing, then becoming a chubby, rigid fish, drifting out of our sight. Fat Melon, don't move, Shirt Flower shouted. Then he nearly lay flat on the staircase, one hand slowly wrapping around Fat Melon's legs. Fat Melon was crying, liquid streaming down his pant legs, soaking a puddle on the step. But Shirt Flower held his lower body tightly, slowly pulling him toward the staircase. Fat Melon, trembling, couldn't stand and crawled down the stairs. His cries grew louder, turning into wails that echoed hollowly beneath the pillar. This idiot, scared to death. Than, whose face had just been pale, now scoffed mockingly, but his laughter quickly died. Fat Melon crawled down, sat in the middle of the pillar, and slowly opened his hand, choking, under the step, caught on a piece of wood. We were all too stunned to speak. Even Quan's eyes widened. This discovery was completely beyond his expectations. In Fat Melon's chubby palm was a handful of dried bow grass. Here, people liked using this tough grass to weave round thick straw mats, cool to sit on in summer, light and breathable. This grass must have come from a straw mat, except it was stained dark red with blood. It had likely been severed by an axe. The cut on the grass clean, wrapped around a piece of a fingernail adorned with glittering stars, attached to a vague segment of a finger joint. The killer must have dismembered the body on this pillar. For some reason, he chose another place to dispose of the body and destroy the tools. He dragged the blood-soaked straw mat up the spiral staircase. But the mat, loosened by the axe, got caught on a piece of wood under the steps, leaving behind a part of Thủy. If Fat Melon hadn't crawled down in that position, it would have been hard to notice. Shirt Flower suddenly turned, vomiting violently into the river. Quan frowned, his face pained, as if his grief was no less than Quai's. Than quickly crouched down. Fat Melon, let me see. Fat Melon, crying, carefully tucked the items into his pocket. The sky suddenly darkened. Dusk fell in an instant, light vanishing mercilessly, leaving only a faint grey glow illuminating Fat Melon's face. I only came for fun. But I found this, so the reward is mine. No one can take it from me, he said, like a beast both timid and greedy. Fat Melon stuffed the finger segment into his pocket. But climbing back to the deck, he lacked confidence, needing Quan and Shirt Flower to pull and push him up. Than stomped hard on the staircase, laughing hysterically. Idiot, take your finger down there. He was like a madman, completely forgetting that if the staircase collapsed, we'd all be trapped under the pillar, including him. It grew darker. Many streetlights on the bridge were broken, only flickering every few dozen meters. Quan decided to explore the final pillar. If we found nothing, we'd go home, and he promised Quai we'd never return to Rach Duke Bridge. He meant that Thui's soul was likely in this bridge's caverns. And regardless of today's outcome, he wouldn't disturb her again. On this stretch, I walked side by side with Quan. Quan was a fairly composed boy. I always had a good impression of him. Hands in his pockets, his eyes under the dim streetlights held a trace of gloom. He asked, "Thung, aren't you scared?" I shook my head. Fat Melon's not scared, so why should I be? 50 million dong reward. That's a lot of power. Quan scoffed through his teeth. I don't believe you're here for the money. And you, not for the money, I countered. You weren't close to Thui. Are you really just here to find evidence and catch her killer? He didn't answer immediately. After a pause, he asked, "Do you think Teacher Vin is the killer?" Teacher Vin. After the victim was identified as Thui, Teacher Vin was taken to the police station as the prime suspect. Before Thui went missing, her mother had caused a scene at school, accusing him of seducing female students. The school board quietly decided to fire him. He was the best music teacher our school ever had, a formal music conservatory graduate, full of passion and ideas. He led students to form a choir and band that won gold in the province. Quan was the bassist in that band. Teacher Vin had fame and good connections, especially adored by female students like an idol. But with Thui, it was different. When her mother first caused a commotion at school, she insisted he had bad intentions, pointing and cursing him directly. Afterward, many parents demanded their daughters quit the choir, and Teacher Vin was gossiped about behind his back. Soon after, Thui disappeared. A week later, her dismembered body was found. Teacher Vin was detained for half a month as the main suspect. But there was no solid evidence. His life was highly structured, teaching or staying in the staff room during the day, practicing with the band or dwindling choir in the evenings, then returning to the school dormitory to rest, sharing a room with Thui's homeroom teacher. He had no time to commit the crime. His life left almost no opportunity to be alone. During those 2 weeks of relentless questioning, Teacher Vin wasted away, the youthful spark in his eyes extinguished. "It's not him. I'm sure it's not," I said. Thui was involved with so many boys. Maybe one of them snapped because of her. Quan gave a cold smile, chilling me for reasons I couldn't pinpoint. We descended to the final pillar. Fat Melon, still traumatized and now with the finger segment as his guarantee, decided to stay on the deck and wait. The streetlights didn't reach, and the pillar was pitch black. But I, the first to go down, saw it, a round, flat object leaning against the back of the pillar. It was too conspicuous, making it hard to believe it was still there. A straw mat, scarred with axe marks, loose at the seams, holding a ring, though just a simple silver band. It stung my eyes. I gently lifted my foot, my heart pounding. A soft rustle sounded, and the straw mat, along with the ring, fell into the Đồng Nai River. The other 4 came down, circled a few times, and found nothing. Than, frustrated, punched the pillar. Kwai stood dazed, staring at a spot, muttering, "I feel like she was here. She's still here, really." Than shot him a contemptuous glance, muttering curses. Quan, head down, circled the pillar twice, stopping where I'd seen the mat. He seemed to be thinking, then suddenly sat on the railing, looking at the river below. I followed his gaze. The Đồng Nai was blackened by night, its waves invisible, but I knew there was a straw mat on the river's surface. Drifting east, a sudden suspicion flashed in my mind. The mat had no bloodstains and was intact, unlike the grass in Fat Melon's pocket. Thinking of Quan's actions, I realized why he'd brought us to Rạch Đục Bridge. The straw mat story was a lie from the start, fabricated by Quan. He used the reward as bait to lead us to find a mat he'd planted. With Teacher Vin's ring, he wanted us to find evidence to make it seem authentic. But when Fat Melon found the grass and finger segment, Quan was as shocked as we were. Was he planning to use fake evidence for the reward? Or did he truly know who the killer was but couldn't accuse them directly? So he resorted to this. Was the real killer Teacher Vin? Quan suddenly turned, staring at me. "Thung, you went down first. Really saw nothing." "Nothing," I said firmly. my palms sweaty. He stared at me, as if a century passed, then turned away, lighting a cigarette. In the flickering flame, I thought I heard him sigh. We returned to the deck, preparing to go home. A few steps in, a commotion broke out behind us. Than and Fat Melon were fighting. Than rummaged through Fat Melon's pocket. But it wasn't the finger segment, it was a valuable gem. Than had taken it, but Fat Melon pinned him down, strangling him on the rail. Fat Melon shouted, "Give it back, or I'll choke you to death." He tightened his grip, sitting on Than's stomach, Than's face turning from pale to purple. Quan and Shirt Flower rushed to intervene, but they couldn't budge Fat Melon's stubborn bulk. Kwai stood at a distance, staring at the finger segment in Than's hand, backing away, then screamed and ran toward the bridge's end. This timid boy, everything that happened today had pushed him beyond his limits. Watching his friends fight over his sister's remains like personal property, just kids his age but unleashing the ferocity of grown beasts, surely he regretted not running away from the start. In the moment everyone was distracted by Kwai. Than gasped, sneering darkly, "Idiot, if I can't have it, you won't get the reward either." He swung his arm, tossing the grass-wrapped finger segment over our heads, into the river below. At that moment, I felt what flew past wasn't a finger but a mocking face. With a starry sky pressing down, sinking into the Đồng Nai River, Fat Melon went berserk, pummeling Than. If he had an axe, he might have dismembered him on the spot. Human hatred and greed, like women shopping, can be whipped into a frenzy, only calming to reveal how much was unnecessary. Finally, Quan kicked Fat Melon hard, flipping him over, ending the brawl in grim silence. On the way back, no one spoke. At the bridge's end, we parted ways. As the train roared past again, I left Rach Duke Bridge. Since I was the only girl, Quan took responsibility for walking me to my neighborhood gate. Along the way, he smoked incessantly, the cigarette like a girl's slender finger, held between his lips, lightly bitten, the glowing tip swallowed, shrinking to a stub. I quickened my pace, avoiding his gaze. He didn't seem to stride deliberately but always matched my rhythm. Near my neighborhood, he said, "Thung, Teacher Vin isn't the good man you little girls think." I turned away, afraid he'd ask about the straw mat. But Teacher Vin was still someone I admired. Talented, radiant. He was the only one patient and encouraging despite my lack of musical talent. Making music class a time the whole school looked forward to. I didn't want someone like him ruined. Nor did I want him framed by Quan's fake evidence. I'll leave it at that. Be careful in the future. Quan said. Quan, I called. Do you think Thủy was beautiful? They say many boys secretly liked her. Some spoke well, some bad. Do you think she was a bad girl? She was great, passionate, straightforward, daring to love and hate. How could she be bad? Quan gave a gentle smile. The only warm one that day. After that, the six of us barely kept in touch, as if deliberately avoiding each other to forget that memory. But as an adult, I couldn't stop recalling that afternoon. Quan, who wove the straw mat story to gather us. Kwai, forced to the scene of his sister's murder. Than, reckless for the reward, ending up battered. Shirt Flower, there to dispel his friend's suspicions. Fat Melon, just there for fun but stumbling on the only clue, igniting his greed. And me, there to destroy any evidence against Teacher Vin. 6 teenagers, each with their own motives, spent a terrifying afternoon on Rach Duke Bridge that late autumn. We changed nothing, but something in each of us seemed to shift. The killer remains a mystery. Kwai's family left the grieving town soon after. Teacher Vin lost his former glow, gaunt as if drained of life. Later leaving the school on his own, I heard no more of him. I, too, left my hometown for studies and work. Until a few days ago, Quan suddenly contacted me online. He said, "Teacher Vin got married. Did you know?" "Oh, so late." I feigned indifference, but my teenage crush left a pang of bitterness. "You're well informed. Did he invite you?" "No way," Quan said. "I'll send you a photo. You probably know the bride." In the photo, Teacher Vin was still gaunt. 10 years had aged him like a man in his 40s. far from the radiant idol of our youth. The woman in the wedding dress beside him was in her prime. I recognized her, a classmate, a loyal choir member under teacher Vin, always ensuring at least one person attended practice. His strongest alibi. She clung to him tightly, like an octopus wrapping its prey, in complete control. Thung, I need to tell you something, Kwan said abruptly. The night Thủy disappeared, I was on Rạch Đục Bridge too. I froze, my mind racing back to that night 10 years ago, tense with the murky truth. I'd been following Thủy for a while. When she went to Rạch Đục Bridge, I realized she planned to jump. I rushed to stop her. She was angry and scared, dragging me down the first spiral staircase, anxiously looking around as if afraid someone would see. I later learned she'd arranged to meet someone, planning to use her death to frame him. I called her foolish. We argued on the pillar. Thủy pointed at me, saying, "Stop following me, or I'll really die." Then she softened, sighing, "Don't waste your feelings. I don't like you." Thủy left, still vibrant, her talk of suicide just a threat, not a dead end. I stayed on the pillar, dejected, staring at the Đồng Nai River. I don't know how long passed, but a short scream echoed from afar. I laughed bitterly, thinking it was her playful shout after reconciling with him. You know Thui's laugh, loud and free. But from a few hundred meters away, I heard steady sounds, like the rhythm teacher Vin set for our band. Drumming, thump, thump, thump. Then the cargo train came. The second of the day, 7 p.m., crossing Rạch Đục. The train was endless. I lit a cigarette, suddenly realizing the horror of those sounds. They weren't from the train. When it passed, I ran toward the noise. Reaching the second pillar, only the stench of blood remained. And in the faint light, a piece of flesh on the ground, still twitching, not yet cold. I don't know if my cigarette's glow alerted the killer to my presence. Making him flee hastily, I ran to the deck. A few hundred meters ahead, a figure seemed to drag a large black bag, perhaps with a tear, but he noticed it in time. I lacked the courage to chase. A murderer was too terrifying for a middle schooler. But over the years, I've grown unsure if what I saw was real or just what I wanted to believe. The platinum ring I found on the third pillar vanished too, everything fading like air. I huddled before my computer, watching the words appear silently, like a ghost recounting its tale. The adults were right. Many who jumped from that bridge died. Ironically, the girl who planned to use death for revenge got her wish, dying at the hands of the one she meant to frame. Thung, on that pillar, you really saw nothing. Nothing at all. I thought I heard Kwan sigh again. I knew he hadn't let go of this over the years. He was tormented by his inability to testify, having never seen the killer's face clearly. If he revealed his actions that night, he'd become the prime suspect. So he could only stay silent. Now, he sought self-deceptive comfort from me. Thung, do you know why the killer dismembered her? Kwan said his final words. Because Thủy told me she was pregnant with teacher Vin's child. Kwan's profile went grey, never lighting up again. I realized he didn't need my comfort. He gave me another decade. A decade of unease following the last. The trust and idol worship, almost fanatical, blindly protective, turned teenage me into an unwitting accomplice. And accomplices, there weren't just me. How many perpetrators in this world still roam free beyond the law? I, like them, like teacher Vin, will be gnawed at by the undeniable truth day by day, until we waste away to mere bones and die. At night, I still dream the nightmares of my childhood. But the fish-like bodies are now pale, dismembered fragments, drifting from one end of Rạch Đục Bridge to the other, mixed with a blood-stained straw mat. They float eastward with grim resolve, carrying unspeakable secrets, merging into the sea, forever unknown. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in. Please subscribe to our channel to not miss the next fascinating story.